Ja, schönen guten Tag.
Hello there. I'm Michaela Hansen. I'm from Hamburg, and I'm very pleased that today my project or my initiative, Granny Aupair, is something I can present to you today. And you will all be familiar with young au pairs, of course. Granny Aupair is an agency that places women who are a bit older. They tend to be over 50, up to 76. So most are retired already, and they go out into the world as au pairs. And I'm often asked, how did you get that idea? I've answered that question many, many times, and I'm happy to do so. But I always get a bit emotional when I do it, because then I remember back to the days when I first had the idea. And I can say that it was almost like being struck by lightning. It was an epiphany, if you like, a term we saw earlier today as well on someone's slide. And it was really banal, really. Sunday afternoon, I was sitting on my sofa. I could have been even lying on the sofa, watching a TV show about young au pairs, and the camera teams watched them at work, as it were. And I always liked watching that show. And the reason I liked it was because I would have loved to have done that as a young girl, but I couldn't do it because I married very early, at 19. And at 20, I had my first child, 21, my second child. And then, of course, you've got your hands full with other things. But at some point I thought, when I saw this show, looking at all these young girls and all their hard work with the kids, I suddenly thought, why don't they have older women being au pairs? They can do it at least as well, if not better, because many of them have far more experience. Often they've raised their own children, so they know what they're doing, and that would work far better. And that was the idea. And then I had a look in the internet to see whether such a thing existed, but it didn't, thankfully. And then I, first of all, told my partner about this and some of my friends. And what was interesting is that the men I talked to about this idea didn't really get a sense of the emotional component here. My partner said, do you really think that's such a great idea? Do you really think women are going to want to do that over 50 or over 60? Do you think they're going to want to go into some strange family and look after other people's children? But the women responded very differently. They immediately said, yeah, great, do it. When I'm older, I'll come along and be a granny au pair myself. So for 9 months, I sort of wandered around gestating this child, if you like. And then I heard about a family from a friend of a friend who said, I'd take a granny au pair tomorrow, quite happily. This was a single mum in Vancouver with her son. So that was my first family. And then I thought, brilliant, okay, well, I can get going then. Now, I originally come from the PR. I still work in the area of PR, and I've done it for about 20 years now. And then I studied before that. I'm a certified sociologist and criminologist. And I suppose I'm a bit of a pioneering spirit in some ways. It was already in the case with criminology. At the time, the course was very new, but that was something I thought was interesting. And I thought that would be exactly the thing I should do. It fits well to sociology, what I did before. And just by the by, I had to do a dissertation at the end of my course, and I did it on undiscovered or unsolved murders. And nobody had actually written one on that the way I did. So like I said, I worked in PR. I had a family by then. I couldn't carry out huge amounts of market research or anything like that, so I thought, why don't I write a press release and just send it out? And the head of my bulletin was looking for a granny as an au pair in Canada. 20 minutes later, I had the first phone calls from the NDR, TV broadcaster, and various daily newspapers as well, and they wanted to know right away how many grannies I had placed as au pairs abroad and how the whole thing worked and all the rest. And I thought, look, I've only just started. I didn't know myself how it was all going to work. But through all of the media attention that I got, I had women getting in touch with me. A lot of women getting in touch with me. And it became clear to me quite quickly that I'd really hit the nail on the head with my idea. So it was as if I'd thrown a stone into the water and all these media ripples had resulted. We had reporting worldwide, not just in Germany, but lots of media did this. Die Zeit, Daily, Spiegel Online, Die Taz watched a granny at work for a full day, and there's lots of TV shows. And I mean, I still have loads of people from the media getting in touch with me and wanting to report on it. So clearly this was an idea for which there was a real need, and people liked the idea of granny au pair. Thankfully, not just the media like the idea, but the grannies do too, the women do too. Die Welt daily once said, grannies are conquering the world, and I loved this headline, because it fits. They really are conquering the world, because we've now got almost 400 women that we've placed in 40 different countries in families. I was recently asked, how many countries have you got? And I thought, maybe it's 15, 20, that would have been my guess. And then I sat myself down and actually bought a map of the world and put little flags on every country. If we've got a granny in that country and has conquered the country, we stick a little flag in it. So that's how I managed to count up my countries, and it transpires that there are 40 different countries that we've placed grannies in, from Tasmania, where you spend a good while looking for it, belongs to Australia, and then Japan, China, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Asian countries, and then Dubai, Egypt, Gambia, South Africa, Tanzania, US as well, sort of classic au pair countries, USA, Canada, Mexico, Bolivia. The list goes on and on. In Europe as well, we've got lots of grannies, and in Germany too, because some don't want to go too far away. They say, look, I'm going to try it out here in Germany. Or some worked quite far away, and now they've come back and want to do a job as an au pair in Germany. So we've got lots of repeat offenders, if you like. It seems that many get hooked. I mean, we all know about Wanderlust. I am a big fan of travel myself, and that's how I got the idea in the first place, because I would have liked to have done it as a young girl and was unable to. And I have to say, I find it very fulfilling to make this possible for some of these women. I've got so much to do that I still don't manage to travel the way I'd like to. But I do find that the women who come back and tell me how their work went, or let me know when they're there, or sometimes a TV team follows them through their everyday life, and I can watch what's happening on television. So then I find out a bit more about what my grannies are experiencing, and I find it very, very fulfilling. The concept or the philosophy behind it is cultural exchange. That's perhaps the most important component. We're bringing people together, and I think that's very fascinating. You're bringing people together who would never have met except through granny au pair. And now they have the opportunity to get to know one another. And I often hear them saying, you know, we spoke on the phone, sometimes they Skype, my grannies Skype me, they're pretty dab hands with all of the latest IT communication. So they'll Skype me and say, oh, it was great, you know, the chemistry was there, we got on like a house on fire, and they're all very happy. I said this already, these women are between 50 and 76. It's hard to imagine, but it's true. We've got women who are 75, 76, and they've gone on a number of au pair missions, as it were, and they're very keen to continue. But I also hear about women who, when they find out about Granny Au Pair from the media, who actually went and bought themselves a computer because that was the only way that they could connect with us. We've got an internet platform as well in the beginning. I basically mailed or posted the questionnaires back and forth, but at some point we couldn't manage that anymore because the whole thing just became too big. Then I had a database constructed, and I've expanded my website, and now you can register online and fill in the questionnaire online and have a look at the families who are looking for au pairs, and the families can have a look at the grannies. So these women are placed in families, but what's nice about the project is that right from the start, it developed almost all on its own. I got a lot of external support. For example, just a few months later, after I launched the company, it was a funny story, really. I got an email from a gentleman from Canada who had read a press report about us, and he is 89 years old and left Germany, emigrated to Canada in the 50s. And he wrote an email to me and said he'd read about this and that his wife had recently died and he's so terribly lonely, whether I couldn't find him a granny to come and live with him. And at first I thought, I may well have one, but it's not really my bag. So I wrote back and said, look, I'm terribly sorry, but you know, we're placing our women with families as au pairs, but I don't think there's much of a need for au pairs among elderly gentlemen. But he was very insistent and wrote straight back and said, listen, I know that you place women with families with children to look after the children, but all the granny should do is make German meals. That's all this granny should do. He'll do breakfast and dinner, and he has the huge house, and he's very spry and mobile and agile, and he would show her the whole country. Because a woman who goes to a family and has to look after their children all day long won't see the country. That's what he said. He promised to travel around with her, and then I thought, all right, whatever. And I actually found someone, to make a long story short, who actually went over to Herbert, as he is called, a 74-year-old woman from Hamburg. I was secretly hoping that they might become a couple, but that didn't happen. But at least they got on very well, and they both wrote me emails telling me about what they were doing. And it was a really sweet little story. And the reason why I'm telling you that story is because it showed me after the fact that if you're open-minded, then you can actually develop a business on its own. It happens on its own, in a sense, you know. Then we were looking for shareholders, partners who would go to other women who are perhaps a bit older, women who are perhaps not so spry and mobile. It's not about nursing care or anything like that, but it was just sort of maybe reading to these older people or taking them on outings, taking them to a museum or taking them shopping or whatever it is, so that they can spend some time together and have a nice time. We've placed a few grannies like that in this sort of situation. Essentially, it's about bringing people together. And whether these grannies are looking after other people's children or visiting somebody lonely like Herbert in Canada, just offer him some company for a few months. Then there's some social projects as well that we added into our portfolio. It was all by chance, although I don't believe in chance really anymore. I think you just have to remain open-minded. Somebody had heard about our project, Granny Aupair, in the media. It was a pastor from Jordan. And he's got a wonderful project for kids, visually impaired and non-visually impaired. It's a school, and there's a nursery attached to it as well. And he rang me up and said what he needs is a young trainee, or he'd lost a young trainee, and now he's looking for somebody to help him, a volunteer. If I could find somebody for him. And I thought as well, Northern Jordan, wow, that wasn't at the top of the travel list or wish list of my ladies, but I had to look at who might fit, and then suddenly Greta occurred to me. She's somebody who spent her whole life as a flight attendant, jetting around the world, a very upbeat woman. And I told her about it, and she spontaneously, she always is, said, I'll do it. So she rang Lufthansa right away, booked the jump seat, and hopped off to Jordan, Northern Jordan. And so then we added the social projects aspect too. Now we're working together with projects in northern India, in Africa, well, in Gambia, Namibia, Tanzania, in Peru, Bolivia, Dominican Republic, Vietnam, lots of different projects we've got going. Most of them involving children, some involving women. In India, for example, the project is a project involving women, where we've managed to place quite a lot of women already. And the projects really appreciate these women. These are women who have experience of life, they know what they want, they're reliable, committed. They're just great and really courageous. That's the other thing. That's what I think is so wonderful. My courage to create a thing like this and to have endurance, and I have to say, there are so many sleepless nights that I've had. I always say, that's my baby, and this, you know what babies are like. They keep you up at night. And I wake up in the night, and then I'm worried, and I have ideas, and all the rest. And sometimes I wish it would just go away, and I want someone else to look after my baby, but of course you can't. It's your baby. And the buck stops here. And somehow I'm proud, of course, that this baby's growing so well. But of course, sometimes it gets on your nerves as well. But I guess that's just how it is sometimes. You have to have a certain amount of passion to stick with a project of this kind. And it's continuing to develop. And I'm really interested in how it's going to develop, because there's an amazing pace of development. I get inquiries from all over the place. A literary agent from Berlin called me up and said, wouldn't you like to write a book about your Granny Aupair site? And I thought, what, a book on top of everything else? Oh, man. But we tried it. We found a publishers, the German pocketbook publishing house, TV from Munich. And last month, Eva Goris, a friend of mine, who is a journalist and a writer, and we actually sat down and wrote a book, which of course took a lot of time and energy as well. And it'll be published in winter this year. And it's called Going into the Wide World as a Granny Aupair, Als Granny Aupair in die Weite Welt. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what will happen. There's a TV film that they're planning to make as well, and I've got lots of ideas about what we can do with this sort of project, the Granny Aupair project. I think that there's still more we could add, more strings we could add to our bow. And I'm always very emotional and excited when I talk about it, like now, because it always sort of grips me emotionally. But I think that's all I really wanted to say to you about Granny Aupair. Thank you for your attention.